The morning sun cast golden light across Cedar Grove Estates as Jessica Turner stepped onto her porch, coffee in hand, savoring the quiet before her busy day. Her 3-acre property had been her dream for more than a decade, a peaceful retreat with a small, gently flowing creek along the edge of her land. The creek had drawn her here first, promising serenity after years of double shifts as an emergency nurse. Long commutes and cramped apartments. She had imagined mornings like this, sunlight dancing on water, birds chirping in the trees, and the soft murmur of flowing water offering calm after sleepless nights. For 3 months, everything had felt perfect. Neighbors waved politely, dogs barked in the distance, and autumn leaves floated lazily downstream. But that peace was about to shatter. Far across the property line, heavy machinery rumbled to life before dawn. The roar of engines cut through the calm, metal grinding against soil. Jessica's heart sank as she ran outside in slippers, seeing a line of workers in crisp uniforms pouring concrete into the creek's channel. At the center stood Harold Greer, the HOA president, clipboard in hand, his smile thin and calculating. "This is a drainage improvement project," Harold said, voice professional but sharp. Jessica's blood ran cold. "This is my water." "You can't do this!" she shouted, panic rising. Harold's gaze remained steady. "The creek originates on HOA land. We have legal authority. Step aside." The quiet neighborhood had transformed instantly into a battleground. Concrete swallowed the life from the creek she had cherished for years. Jessica's hands shook as she watched, her dream waterway suffocate beneath gray slabs. The morning sun illuminated not just her yard, but the start of a fight she could not ignore. Jessica retreated into her cottage, mind racing, determined to fight. She opened her laptop and began researching relentlessly. Hours stretched into nights as she pored over every environmental regulation, water rights law, and municipal code that could protect her creek. She discovered that her property sat on a historic wetland system recognized by the state, feeding a federally protected tributary downstream. The concrete barrier wasn't just an aesthetic issue. It violated multiple laws designed to preserve waterways and wetlands. The HOA responded with intimidation. Fines arrived in the mail. Unapproved landscaping, obstruction of community standards, unauthorized modifications. But Jessica refused to back down. She meticulously documented everything, from water flow analysis to photographic evidence. She even hired Max Patel, a licensed hydrologist, to survey the creek. Max, calm and methodical, explained that formal complaints to the state, Environmental Protection Agency, and the Army Corps of Engineers could reverse the HOA's illegal construction. Her neighbors whispered about her at fences. Some called her difficult or litigious, but Jessica ignored it. She tracked rainfall, mapped drainage patterns, and compiled stacks of evidence. Her living room had become a war room. Sleep was minimal. Meals were quick. Each day, her obsession grew, fueled by the knowledge that the creek, the very reason she had bought her dream property, was being suffocated. Her fight had just begun, and she would not surrender. 6 weeks had passed since the concrete destroyed Jessica's creek, and the tension had only escalated. Her detailed complaints had finally drawn attention from the State Environmental Protection Agency. Inspectors arrived without notice, fully equipped to document and analyze every violation. Leading the team was Dr. Carla Simmons, a seasoned environmental scientist with sharp eyes and quiet authority. She inspected every inch of the creek, measuring water flow, testing soil, and photographing the concrete barrier. The HOA president, Harold Greer, attempted to maintain control, issuing more fines and warnings, claiming Jessica was disrupting community harmony. But the inspectors worked methodically, noting violations, collecting evidence, and preparing a case that could not be ignored. Jessica watched closely, exhausted but determined, taking notes alongside the team. The creek, once silenced by concrete, now had powerful allies: the law, science, and her relentless persistence. By the end of the 3rd week, the preliminary report revealed multiple violations: state wetland protection acts, federal water regulations, and unpermitted modifications. Jessica felt cautious relief. For the first time, the HOA's authority was being challenged not in whispers, but officially. Neighbors began to notice, some peeking from fences, others asking discreet questions. Jessica realized she was no longer alone. Her creek had become a symbol, a quiet rebellion against negligence, a testament to persistence and careful preparation. Spring arrived with heavy, relentless rain. Jessica watched from her porch as water pooled across low-lying yards and streets, creeping closer to homes. The concrete barrier across her creek, intended to control drainage, instead caused water to back up into the HOA's retention pond and neighboring properties. Panic spread quickly. Neighbors called emergency meetings, plumbers were overwhelmed, and social media exploded with photos of flooded lawns, soaked basements, and desperate residents. Harold Greer's authority faltered. The HOA hired emergency engineers, who confirmed what Jessica had long suspected. The concrete barrier had disrupted natural drainage. Her creek, once a relief valve for the system, had been sealed shut, creating chaos. Engineers presented two solutions: massive, new drainage systems or collaboration with environmental specialists to restore natural wetland flow. Either option carried enormous costs, and homeowners who had once criticized Jessica now faced assessments in the thousands. Margaret Greer's spite had backfired spectacularly. Jessica remained steadfast. She continued documenting every detail: water flow measurements, photos, and environmental changes. By mid-April, a new HOA president, Tom Chen, a retired civil engineer, was elected. His first act was visiting Jessica personally. "We're removing the barrier next week," he said quietly. "And I want your input on the restoration." Relief and anticipation surged. After months of fear and exhaustion, the concrete that had killed her creek would finally fall, and water would breathe again. The morning the crew arrived to remove the concrete, Jessica stood on her porch, sleeves rolled up, ready to witness the restoration of her creek. Jackhammers shattered the gray slabs, excavators lifted massive chunks, and water began to seep through cracks where it had been blocked for months. The sound, loud and relentless, felt beautiful, a rhythmic reminder of resilience. Within hours, small rivulets traced the creek's original path, cautious at first, then gathering strength. Birds chirped uncertainly, as if testing the renewed flow. Neighbors cautiously emerged from their homes, peeking over fences, some with cameras. A few offered coffee to the workers, their fear of Jessica transforming into quiet admiration. Tom Chen coordinated carefully, consulting with Jessica about native plants, erosion prevention, and wetland restoration. Contractors reshaped the stream bed, planted vegetation, and installed boardwalks and observation platforms. Slowly, the creek regained its vitality. Ducks returned, herons landed gracefully, and even a timid family of otters claimed a secluded bend. For the first time in months, Jessica allowed herself to cry. Not from anger, but from relief. Exhaustion, fear, and sleepless nights poured out in quiet sobs. Her neighbors began walking the new trails, learning about the ecosystem. The battlefield of the past had transformed into a sanctuary. Margaret Greer's influence faded, replaced by environmental stewardship, collective effort, and respect for natural law. Jessica realized her creek was more than water. It was the pulse of the neighborhood, proof that patience, persistence, and courage could rewrite even the darkest chapters. Months passed, and the creek had fully returned to life. Boardwalks wound through native grasses. Small viewing platforms offered vantage points for wildlife, and educational signs explained wetland ecology. Children ran along the trails. Families picnicked near the water, and birds chirped as herons landed gracefully. Even a small family of otters had taken up residence along a secluded bend. Jessica often sat on her observation deck, coffee in hand, watching the water flow. The creek no longer whispered of destruction, but sang a steady, reassuring rhythm. Tom Chen continued to visit weekly, sharing updates on native plants, erosion control, and ecological balance. Neighbors, once critical or distant, approached her with apologies and admiration. Sarah, who had avoided Jessica for months, brought cookies one afternoon. "The wetland is amazing," she said, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for not giving up." The lawsuit Margaret Greer had filed was dismissed after the federal investigation confirmed violations, and Jessica received compensation that allowed her to clear debts and improve her property. Her home, once a battleground, now held increased value, cherished by wildlife and people alike. The first community celebration brought neighbors together. children laughing on the boardwalks, families enjoying picnics, and a local band performing on a platform overlooking the water. Fireflies danced above the creek at dusk. A deer drank cautiously from the bank, and somewhere an owl called softly. Jessica smiled, reflecting on the journey. Sometimes defending what is fragile requires patience, persistence, and courage. But the world can change when someone refuses to give up. The creek had taught her that lesson, and now the neighborhood had learned it too.